Welcome to MTG Friends. I'm Ryan.
And I'm Zach.
And this is the recap for the Zendikar Rising spoilers. And we're just going to jump right in because we got a lot of cards to cover. Is that right, Zach?
Yes, indeed.
Yes, indeed.
A whole bunch of highlights.
All right, why don't you get us started?
All right. So the first thing we're going to talk about is actually 5 cards. Hey, what a good start.
Oh, yes.
We're going to talk about the 5 mythic rare bolt lands, which are the modal dual-faced cards, one of each of the 5 colors, with a card on the front and a land on the back that can enter untapped if you pay 3 life.
Modal
lands.
Yes.
Really, we're going to talk about 2 of them here. We're going to talk about Agadeem's Awakening, which is the X black sorcery that lets you return from your graveyard to the battlefield any number of target creatures that each have a different converted mana cost of X or less. And Seagate Restoration, which is 4 blue for a sorcery. Draw cards equal to the number of cards in your hand, +1. You have no maximum hand size for the rest of the game.
Right.
The other 3 are all good. They're fine, but they're not, like, crazy.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to play them. They're a land on the back. They're an untapped land on the back, too. But I think Agadeem's Awakening is just, by large, the best one of this bunch.
Yes, it is.
This thing's really great. It has a ton of flexibility. It's like technically the cheapest of the 3, or of the 5 rather. I mean that's just fantastic. You get to return any number of creatures with different CMCs, and all you have to do is pay a base 3 mana, and then just keep rising it for the number of creatures you want to grab.
Yeah, the X factor in this is what makes this card great.
Absolutely, it really makes it shine.
Yep.
Golden buzzer, let's go.
Yep, that one wins.
Yep.
All right.
Seagate Restoration is one that I think is going to be a lot more interesting for commander decks that are blue, are a little more control-y, just are going to draw the game out a lot. And even for standard, I think some control decks will really appreciate this. If they're able to draw the game out long, keep a handful of cards, suddenly no draw becomes bad because you can never run out of hand size.
Yeah, unless you're playing against Mill.
Yeah, exactly.
But
you don't quite want this.
Yeah.
What I do like about the Seagate Restoration's effect is the fact that it essentially accounts for the fact that you're casting it from your hand. You draw cards equal to the number of cards in your hand, and then an additional one, that being the Seagate Restoration you just cast.
Yes.
I think it's real good.
Yeah.
The green one's pretty solid as well, since it has like some built-in almost whiff protection by putting 1/1 counters on a CMC 3. What is it? It's either Power 3 or CMC 3 or less. We didn't put that one on our document because it wasn't insane.
Right.
But they're all good. They're all very playable. It's just these 2 were the ones that really stood out to us.
Indeed, indeed. All right, so the next one is Ancient Green Warden for a 6-drop, creature elemental, 5/7, reach. You may play lands from your graveyard. If a land entering the battlefield causes a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, that ability triggers an additional time. We both agree that this one is bananas cool.
Yeah, I was excited when I saw it the first time, and so far every time I've opened a document with this on it, I've gone, ooh.
Yes. Yes.
It's just, I love seeing that you may play lands from your graveyard text, and the fact that it's a land harmonicon just makes it all the better.
Yeah, and I don't think that it being a 6-drop is going to scare away people from playing this.
Yeah. It's in green, the color that can get to 6 mana in a couple of turns.
Yep, and with so much mana ramp, I think you could even see something like this in standard.
I think so too.
Yep.
Especially with the landfall triggers and the fact that we have some sacrifice. Fetch is in standard,
yes.
That being like passage. I think this is going to do a lot of work.
Indeed, indeed, indeed. I agree wholeheartedly. Scoot Swarm. It's a 3-drop, 1/1. Insect creature. I'm on the fence about whether this is a busted card because I think it is so great. Landfall. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, create a 1/1 green insect creature token. If you control 6 or more lands, create a token that's a copy of Scoot Swarm instead. I mean, Landfall I just feel is a very strong mechanic. I always have since Zendikar, and this is no exception.
I agree. What I do like about this card a lot is it's really well balanced. It's got that like safety valve where you play it early enough that your opponent has a chance to interact before it really starts getting out of hand. But I think this could see play, especially like we mentioned in our reveal episode on this with the mutate mechanic. But the fact that we were just talking about Ancient Greed Warden being a 6-drop and nobody being scared away, I think that it's the same thing here. If you control 6 or more lands, that's a really easy threshold to hit in green.
Uh-huh.
And I think just mutating on top of Scoot Swarm is going to make this thing really, really powerful. Your board has the ability to just massively go huge. I think it's a great card.
Yep. Lithiform Engine, 4-drop. This card is super cool. It's got a couple things you can do, but the one that we really honed in on is that third mechanic, which is 4 tap, copy target permanent spell you control.
I love this. It's so unique. I mean, it's literally brand new rules texts.
Yeah.
I'm really excited to get the release notes for Zendikar Rising so I can actually dig into what the rules meaning for this is and how it functions. We actually got a really interesting point on Twitter where, like, this actually doesn't work with doubling season. Interestingly enough.
Okay.
Yeah. So normally, you know, when you make a token, you would double it with cards like Doubling Season and other token doubling effects like Anointed Procession. But this effect does not create a token. It just puts a token onto the battlefield because a permanent spell is resolving.
Oh.
But there's no actual card to resolve, and so it has to put a token there.
Okay. Yeah.
And this was the rules manager of Magic tweeting out about this, and I thought that was really interesting because it's just such a strange and unique like interaction there.
Yeah, and I don't think that's a deterrent.
I think that's the right move.
Yeah, I don't think that's a deterrent.
No, not at all.
Yeah, because
I just think that that's just such a weird thing to have to think about, sitting there going, wait, so you don't create a token. You know, nothing is telling you to create a token. Thus, there's nothing for Doubling Season to double. It's just a permanent spell trying to resolve and going, wait a minute, I don't have an actual Magic card here. Here's a token.
Okay. All right, yeah.
Super cool. Super weird.
Very interesting. All right, Scourge of the Sky Clave, or Scourge. Probably Scourge of the Sky Claves.
Scourge.
2-drop kicker 5 */*. When you cast a spell, if it was kicked, each player loses half their life, rounded up. Half, sir. Scourge of the Skyclave's power and toughness are each equal to 20 minus the highest life total among players. I think this is a super duper fantastic card.
I like this just as a card that you draw late and drop, and it's like a 5/5, 6/6, so on and so forth.
Yeah.
But, like, the fact that you have the ability to drop it as a 7-drop and start having life totals,
I
think that's really cool. And it's also just a cool, risky card where you need your life total low as well, or this card is useless. In the same vein as Death Shadow, though, again, Death Shadow is going to be infinitely stronger than this because you only have to worry about 1 life total.
Yes.
But I do think having that flexibility of even just having the have everyone's life effect is really, really good.
Yeah. That's very...
And also in Commander, you play this with Wound Reflection and kill everyone.
There you go again. Very cool card. All right. And on to the next one. Lateline Tyrant, 4-drop in red, a 4/4 flyer. Dragon, you don't lose unspent red mana as steps and phases in. When Leyline Tyrant dies, you may pay any amount of red. When you do, it deals that much damage to any target. I personally think this is a broken card. I don't know if it's going to get levered in a way that it becomes truly broken, but the fact that you have a flyer that only costs 4, that you get to just retain all unspent red mana, I think that's...
This is sick.
Wunderbar. Yeah.
Definitely the first time, as far as I can recall, that red has gained the ability to keep its mana like this. And previously, I think the only time has been green being able to do that, and then like certain colorless effects. But just so creative. This is really like a resurgence back to like Amonkhet days when Big Red was kind of a thing. With like Hazaret and Glorybringer. And obviously, this is not Glorybringer in any way, shape, or form. Glorybringer is a hasty, exerting creature. But this is just super cool where you drop it on turn 4, and then you continue playing your red deck wins effects that are usually smaller mana. And then this literally kind of creates a safety valve of what I call running out of gas when it comes to red.
Red is notorious for that.
Red normally will run out of gas when it finishes vomiting its hand on the Like, literally, think about it. You're playing a bunch of 1 and 2 drops. Turn 5 rolls around. If your opponent's still kicking, you got no more cards in hand. This basically says, oh, you had 3 leftover mana because you just played a 1-drop haste last turn?
Mm-hmm.
Well, hey, tap those. We'll hang on to that for later.
Right, and
then somebody finally removes the Tyrant, and then bam, you smack him in the face for 18. Like,
and then your opponent's going to hesitate to kill it because whatever's left over, you're going to allocate to wherever it makes the most sense on the board.
Exactly.
So
granted, it is any target, but it's only one target, so like you can't just spread it out. If you could, that would have been insane. But I mean, 90% of the time, this is going right to face, and that's exactly how it should be.
And that's how red is. That's how red loves to be. Ashaya.
Oh, you have a 20/20? That's okay. I'm going to hit you in the face.
Yeah, exactly. Ashaya, Soul of the Wild, the 5-drop in green legendary creature elemental star/star. Ashaya, Soul of the Wild's power and toughness are each equal to the number of lands you control. Non-token creatures you control are forest lands in addition to their other types. Now, there's already Landwalk in this set, so this is powerful in that sense.
Landfall, yeah.
Or Landfall? Did I say Landwalk? Landfall.
Yep. Also a cool mechanic, but not here.
Yes. And then its toughness is equal to the number of lands you have. There's just so much going on in this card. I think this is one of the strongest cards in the entire set.
I would completely agree with you. Like we mentioned back when this revealed, the fact that this protects you against certain cards in Eternal formats. Mm-hmm. You have Ashaya out in Commander, or really any format where somebody's going to play a Cyclonic Rift, so Commander. And, I mean, none of your stuff bounces, or none of your creatures bounce because they're all lands, and Cyclonic Rift doesn't affect lands. I mean, and yes, like we said, the landfall triggers, even going back to the Ancient Green Warden or whatever it was called, the Elemental up a little bit earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Ancient Green Warden. I mean, that doubles up all your landfall triggers every time you play a creature. This thing is nuts.
Yeah, this is a very, very strong card in most formats.
Yeah.
Speaking of strong cards, this one blew me away. Morag, Fury of Akum for a 6-drop, 6/6 legendary creature, Minotaur Warrior. Each creature you control gets +1/+0 for each time it has attacked this turn. And then the most important part of this whole card is Landfall again. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, if it's your main phase, there's an additional combat phase after this phase. At the beginning of that combat, untap all creatures you control. That is just so, even for a 6-drop, I think this is incredibly...
And it's a 6/6 on its own, man.
Yeah, it's a 6/6 on its own, plus it gives everything +1, and then this landfall mechanic is just crazy. I
straight up say this is the best landfall effect we've ever gotten in the game.
Yes.
This is incredible.
What about Avenger of
I mean, Avenger's
Zendikar?
Cool, but like... That's just a 1/1 counter, you know?
That's true. This one, you're swinging
this is
multiple
an extra
times.
combat step that untaps stuff on a creature that pumps your dudes that are attacking.
Yeah, you're running green, and then you run a Cultivate. You pull 2 lands. Although, mind you, 1 goes in your hand. Let's say you put 2 down. That means you attack 1, 2, 3 times, right?
Yeah, because you get a combat step, and then you get your extra combat step, and then you get your extra combat step. And let's not forget that there is a really lovely card that's in Standard right now who gives you 2 extra land drops every single turn.
Oh, yes. Azusa?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would not...
I wasn't going to name her, so you didn't have to put her on screen.
You love having me put stuff on the screen. It's all good. I would not be surprised if this gets banned. Now, it's way too early. It hasn't even been released yet.
Because it's a 6-drop?
Yeah, I don't think it'll get banned because it's a 6-drop. I agree with you.
I think this is one of those cards that just exists as a super cool finisher.
Uh-huh.
But Commander is going to love this.
Yes, it is. Oh, man.
And also there's a dude who reviews sets based on the strength of the Minotaurs in them, so he's going to be psyched about this one.
Oh, yeah. Minotaurs, yes. Thieving Skydiver for 2/1, creature Merfolk Rogue, Kicker X, flying. When Thieving Skydiver enters the battlefield, if it was kicked, gain control of target artifact with converted mana cost X or less. If that artifact is an equipment, attach it to Thieving Skydiver. I don't necessarily think this is going to be super strong in Standard or Draft for that matter, but I think this has a home in Commander decks because you're stealing people's mana rocks. You're stealing. You steal
a Soul Ring. I mean, X can't be 0, so you're not stealing their mana crypt for 2, but for 3 they're stealing your mana crypt. So like, this is incredible.
Yeah.
And I mean, honestly, I think this is still really good in draft
Uh-huh.
because there's some solid equipments there, and this has that rider of if it's an equipment, you just get to put it straight onto your Skydiver.
Mm-hmm.
Like you pay 5 for this, and you grab somebody's Maul, the white one that gives what is it, like flying and first strike and +2/+2.
Right. That's
I mean,
gonna
you just
really.
got a free thieve and free equip. Like this thing is nuts.
Yes.
This
Yeah.
is, in my opinion, one of the best rares in the set.
Yeah. Absolutely. And
So flexible. I mean, and at very worst, it's a rogue for a 2/1 flyer for 2.
yeah, which is
also
just
fine.
those stats alone are fine.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. Angel of Destiny, a 5-drop in white. Angel Cleric, a 2/6. Now I like that it has 6. We both like that it has 6 toughness.
Mhm.
Flying double strike. Whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, you and that player each gain that much life. At the beginning of your end step, if you have at least 15 life, more than your starting life total, each player Angel of Destiny attacked this turn loses the game. This is going into my life gain commander deck.
Yes.
I
my
mean,
God.
this
This
is
is
going into
everything.
any life gain commander deck I have.
Even just incidental life gain. If you have white and the ability to gain more than 15 of your starting life,
Yes.
this card is nuts.
Yeah, can you imagine putting this on with a Johnny and
Yeah.
Is a Johnny rotating out?
Yes, he's in
Okay.
War of the Spark.
Okay, so never
Yeah,
mind on
our
a Johnny.
Planeswalker options are actually plummeting.
Yes.
We're,
Alright.
Oko's banned, so Eldraine only has Garruk and the twins.
Uh-huh.
Ikoria only had 3 of them as well, and I mean Core had 6, but
Uh-huh.
they're all monocolored.
I
But
gotcha.
this is
But we do
this
have
is-
a Planeswalker coming up in this list that
Yeah.
is no match for some of those for sure.
yeah. Just one other funny thing I want to mention about this card real quick before we talk about Planeswalkers. This card does not have lifelink, so you can give it lifelink and gain even more life you hit with it.
Yep. Nighthawk Scavenger, 3-drop in black, Vampire Rogue, 1+*/3, Flying Death Touch, Lifelink. That's a whole lot of abilities. Nighthawk Scavenger power is equal to 1 plus the number of card types among cards in your opponent's graveyard. So this is just a great card.
This is Vampire Nighthawk's upgrade outright. I mean, it has the same keywords, but just better in almost every way.
Yeah.
The only time this is worse is if nobody has a single card in their graveyard.
Yeah, I love this card, and you know what? The artwork on this thing is worth mentioning because it's like, is that a solar eclipse behind him, or is that what is happening there?
I have no idea, especially since it's a Nighthawk Scavenger.
Yeah,
like-
so is that the moon? It just looks really, really cool.
But this is a flying Death Touch lifelink Tarmogoyf of sorts.
Yes.
With, of course, the nice safety valve of having just 3 toughness. That was well done there.
Yep. Well,
This card could have been a lot more scary if it wasn't, but
it's
I mean, does it need to be scarier? This is in standard. This card's great.
and it's a vampire, which is always a good thing. Speaking of vampires,
And a rogue.
Drana, the Last Blood Chief for 5 in black, 4/4 legendary creature vampire cleric, flying. Of course, flying. Whenever Drana, the Last Blood Chief, attacks, defending player chooses a non-legendary creature card in your graveyard. You return that card to the battlefield with a 1/1 counter on it. The creature is a vampire, in addition to its other types.
Yeah.
I would have liked to see this as a 4-drop because then it would be so powerful. But even as a 5-drop, I think it's playable.
Yeah, my two options were either change it to a 4-drop or give it haste as a 5-drop.
Mm-hmm.
Either of those would have made this like incredibly playable, but this card's just still super noteworthy.
Yes.
It's an aggressive 4/4. You get to take something from an opponent's graveyard, but they choose. There's like some mind game options there.
Okay.
It rewards you kind of exiling stuff out of their graveyard. And it even rewards you when you're playing against Escape from Theros Beyond Death, where they just happen to have exiled stuff, and then you drop Drana, and now they've only got like 2 cards left in their graveyard.
Yeah.
They're stopping their own options.
Yeah, I don't know how playable this card's gonna be, but if I would draft this for sure, and I don't know if it's gonna end up in a lot of the top I don't think it's gonna end up in the top meta.
I don't either.
Yeah.
But I just think it's a card that, you know, when it pops up in a draft, I'm going to be really happy to see it because
Absolutely.
limited, this is a bomb.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of bombs, Nissa of Shadowed Boughs, 4/4. What a perfect cost for this card. It's got 4, and it's landfall. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, put a loyalty counter on Nissa of Shadowed Boughs. +1, untap target land you control. You may have it, so you choose to become a 3/3 elemental creature with haste and menace until end of turn. It's still a land. And a down tick of 5, which is totally doable with this card. You may put a creature card with converted mana cost less than or equal to the number of lands you control onto the battlefield from your hand or graveyard with 2/1 counters on it. This card is the bomb. The mana is perfect. If it was 3, it would be ridiculous. If it was 5, I don't think it would be super playable.
Nope. I think 4 is that beautiful sweet spot where this comes into be playable. That -5 is completely possible. It's in just the right colors to want to be ramping here. I mean, the only other color you could possibly add is blue here. But as long as there's some green base in there, you're going to get a lot of ramp going on. Yeah. You're going to get a lot of lands. Like, this is spectacular.
Like, I want to shoehorn this into whatever deck I'm playing on the ladder, even though I'll probably end up doing mono red again. But if I can, I'm playing a deck with that in it.
I think Sultai is about to be a thing because Uro still exists in green-blue. So black, green, blue, Nissa, Uro, like we're gonna have some crazy stuff going on.
Yeah. Speaking of crazy stuff, this next card, Zendikar, the Trickster, 3 blue, black, legendary creature, Merfolk Rogue with some craziness in it. It's a 4/4 flash. Remember the flash part.
Flash for 5 as a 4/4. Great stats.
Yeah, and you pay 4. Return an unblocked attacking rogue you control to its owner's hand. Put Zendikar, the Trickster, from your hand onto the battlefield, tapped and attacking. Whenever Zendikar deals combat damage to a player, you may put target permanent card from that player's graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. This is a very powerful card.
Yes, indeed. I mean, it already has that option of just being a 4-drop, which is spectacular. The fact that it can kind of sneak its way out onto the battlefield when your opponent is not expecting it, just because you swung in with a couple rogues that maybe they can't block.
And it's got that ninjutsu.
Rogues. Yeah, there are literally rogues that are unblockable in this set. This is so easy to get out for 4. And suddenly you're chunking them for 4 damage instead, and then bam, you get to steal literally any permanent from their graveyard. You could take lands if they've milled them in there or put them in there themselves. You know, they crack their Fabled Passage on turn 4, then you sneak Zendikar out, and bam, you've just stolen their Fabled Passage and gained yourself a land in the process.
Yep. Super.
Not to mention just whatever crazy creatures are in there.
Yeah, so great card. This set, this Zendikar Rising set, I think is one of the strongest we've seen in quite a while.
Yeah, it's like this nice almost balance. I don't think this set has like anything that is quite as broken as cards like Uro or Oko, but it's like at this really sweet spot of like the mechanics are great, the power level feels strong and good, but there's nothing that feels like inherently broken.
Right.
And I really, really like that. It makes me feel very happy in the power level we're seeing here. Of course, in a month or two, I could be completely eating my words as some card takes over Legacy, but...
Oh, yeah. It's always bound to happen.
I'm not seeing anything that I think is going to get there.
Gotcha.
Which is fine. Like, that's good.
Jace Mirror Mage for 3. Jaces are always Jaces. Kicker 2, which I think makes this very interesting in the Jace ilk. When Jace Mirror Mage enters the battlefield, if Jace was kicked, create a token that's a copy of itself, except it's not legendary and its starting loyalty is 1. Scry 2 for an uptick, and for no uptick or downtick, draw a card and reveal it. Remove a number of loyalty counters equal to that card's converted mana cost from Jace. So it comes in with 4, so you can then play something 4, right?
Yeah, you get to draw. Well, here's
draw it. Yeah.
You draw it, and it removes that number of loyalty counters on it, but there's no requirement that you have to have exactly that many on it. You know, you could reveal an 8-drop, and you'd still get to draw it. I mean, you get the card.
Really?
The 8 loyalty is not a cost.
Draw a card.
So you draw it, and then it just hits. It basically hits Jace for 8 damage. So I mean, you'll remove the 8 loyalty. He'll die. he doesn't have 8 loyalty to remove, but there is absolutely no restriction on what the CMC of the card is,
Really?
which is exactly why the copy of him is essentially, hey, draw a free card.
Uh-huh. Okay.
Because you'd run these out, and this is where like the really interesting flexibility on this card comes out, is you can play it just as a single Jace for 3. Scry 2, or just risk the top card. Play it as the 2 Jace for 5. And then you can scry 1 with either of them. If you think you can protect both of them, maybe you double scry. Or maybe you single scry and see a land on top and you want that land, and you draw the land for free. Or you zero both of them, and maybe one of them survives, maybe it doesn't. But I think the real, like the core line of play here is play Jace Mirror Mage, kick it, main Jace, uptick and scry 2, find the best card of the 2, and then zero your copy and ping your copy away, and you just got a free draw off of it while also getting a scry 2 for a total of 5 mana, and you still have a 5 loyalty Jace sitting there ready for you next turn.
Yeah. So
with probable knowledge of what the other card on top of your deck is.
Yeah, and it being a 3-drop, I think is pretty good. I think if this was a 4-drop, I'd be like, meh.
Yep, I think 3 is the sweet spot here because it has that flexibility between being 3 and 5 based on what your needs are.
Yes.
Great card.
This next card, Maddening Cacophony, for a 2-drop. When we did this reveal, we both were like, yes, this is going into our mill decks.
Yeah.
It's got the flexibility of being a 2-drop to mill somebody for 8, and then it has the kicker, which means if you kick it, half their library goes away. And as you pointed out, each opponent. So this is going to be a mill card staple for anybody in Commander.
Yeah, and even Two-Headed Giant is going to love this if there's Two-Headed Giant events firing for pre-release. Not that I really expect that to happen with coronavirus going around, but hypothetically,
yes,
Two-Headed Giant would enjoy this as well.
Indeed. Arkhan of Emeria, a 3-drop 2/3 Arkhan flyer. Each player can't cast more than 1 spell each turn. Non-basic lands your opponents control enter the battlefield tapped. For a 3-drop to make them have land issues. Great.
Yeah. This basically says to any more than like 2-color deck, slow it down, buddy.
Yeah.
Chill.
Yeah.
Stop.
Yeah.
This slaps Uro in the face repeatedly because he wants to be ramping lands out, and then suddenly all of his stuff's entering tapped, and he doesn't quite get the same power level off of that.
Mm-hmm.
And then not to mention just having a Rule of Law effect stapled onto a 2/3 flyer is just excellent.
Mm-hmm. Confounding Conundrum for a 2-drop enchantment. You wanted this on the list. You say why.
Yeah. Speaking of hating on land drops, this is an enchantment that for 2 mana draws you a card, so it replaces itself in essence, and then just sits on the battlefield and says, hey, you want to play more than 1 land a turn? Yeah, no. It basically turns all of your opponent's lands into bouncing treasures of sorts, because anytime you try to play more than one of them in a single turn, they can get that mana for the turn, but it never lets your opponents really get ahead of you on the mana, on the land curve, rather.
Yeah.
And the fact that this is a 2-drop comes down that early, I think this card is an absolute powerhouse and is going to see play. If ramp continues to be a thing in Standard, we'll see play in any format where ramp is really large, and then in Commander, I think this thing is just going to be an instant include for most blue decks. In any players that are expecting to run to ramp at all.
Yeah.
And the opportunity cost to play this is really low, because at the very least, it's drawing you a card when you play it.
Yep. Indeed. Akiri, Fearless Voyager for 3. A 3/3. Whenever you attack a player with 1 or more equipment creatures, draw a card. You may unattach an equipment from a creature you control. If you do, tap that creature and it gains indestructible until end of turn. Wonderful.
Yeah, like we said in our reveal, this scales really well for Commander. It's a 3/3 for 3 in Boros that needs it. That unattach effect just costs a single white. This card's crazy. I don't think this is like competitive EDH level or anything, but I think this is really strong for general Commander. And if you're playing any Boros deck that runs, any non-trivial amount of equipments, this card's really strong.
Yeah, absolutely.
I like this a lot.
Yep. Yushan, Implicable Earth, 4-drop, 4/4. Elemental Boar. When Yushan enters the battlefield, search your library for a basic forest card and a basic plains card. Reveal those cards, put them into your hand, then shuffle your library. Players can't pay life or sacrifice non-land permanents to cast spells or activate abilities. I love this card. I just love this card.
It's an incredible hate board that essentially draws you 2 cards on play. It's a legend. It's a 4/4 for 4. And just the sheer number of things it shuts off, even just in Standard, let alone in Commander and beyond, is incredibly powerful.
And there is a top meta deck that is all about sacking and making you sack with that witch or whatever that thing is. Although that is rotating out, so that's less of an issue. But yeah,
certain cards in there are rotating out. Cauldron Familiar is still around, I believe, as is the Cauldron itself. If I'm remembering correctly, I believe both of those were Eldraine cards.
Well, Familiar is banned.
Well, yeah, true. But I think that deck would have still been a thing if Yushan hadn't just been spoiled and gone, hey, so about that sacrifice thing.
Yeah, we're done with that for a little while.
Yeah.
All right, Valica Awakening for 3.
Yeah.
Put any number of cards from your hand onto the bottom of your library, then draw that many cards plus 1, and it's a modal card. Is this a bolt land? I can't remember.
No, this is just a regular flipped into tap land, but I think this thing is still the real deal. I mean, it's 2 and a red for an instant. I mean, this is instant speed. That's an incredible amount of flexibility between a land and an instant. And the fact that it doesn't even discard the cards, it just puts them under the bottom. On the one hand, that kind of sucks because you want to be discarding in certain strategies, but I mean, this basically lets you go, hey, I drew this late game and I've got a couple lands and some crappy cards in my hand. I'm just going to put those where I won't have to see them again and draw new cards, and then also replaces itself with its effect because you're getting that extra card plus 1.
Yep.
That's essentially accounting for Valica Awakening being cast.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Glasspool Mimic for 3. Shapeshifter. You may have Glasspool Mimic enter the battlefield as a copy of a creature you control, except it's a shapeshifter rogue in addition to its other types. For 3, that's great.
On the back. Yeah. I mean, this is a great cost for a clone, and it keeps up the rogue synergies, and it has the flexibility of, I have nothing good to copy. Cool, I'm a tapped blue land on the back. Enjoy.
Yep.
Incredible.
And then in this set, you wanted to mention the modal lands.
Yes. Just big shout out. I think the modal untapped dual lands, not even dual lands, but 2-sided lands are super creative. We have 6 of them here, 2 allied and 2 enemy, and we have confirmation that our very next standard legal set, Kaldheim, will contain the remaining 4. In fact, we actually have confirmation that Kaldheim and Strixhaven, our next 2 standard legal sets, will also contain their own unique twists on modal dual face cards.
Cool.
So we're going to be seeing more of these in the next 2 sets.
I'm looking
likely
forward.
Not lands on the back on the other 2 sets. My theory for Kaldheim is they're going to do like a legendary creature on one side and then like their saga on the back.
Ooh, a saga.
That's the whole Viking theme.
That would be cool.
And then probably for Strixhaven, they'll do something like a creature and then a spell that they've learned on the back, so you have that option as well. But these lands are super cool. I love this new tech, and I'm really excited to see what the next 2 sets have in store for these as well.
Sky Clave Apparition, a 3-drop and white.
I think this is actually the start of our honorable mentions.
Oh, yes, you're right. So these are the honorable mentions. We're not going to deep dive in these, but Sky Clave Apparition, it's a 2 true. Just a solid card, core spirit.
Cool exile effect. It has interactions like Old Oblivion Ring, where if you can flicker it, you can like permanently remove stuff. And the fact that the stuff never comes back and it actually just gives an XX illusion, I think is super cool. This card's powerful. Play it.
Zagreus, Thief of Heartbeats, 6-drop vampire, and this costs 1 less for each of your parties. Flying Death Touch Haste. That has all 3. That's crazy. Other creatures you control have Death Touch. Whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a planeswalker, destroy it. That's a lot of power. Yeah.
I mean, this set's Questing Beast. It just has so much text and a lot of silly stuff going on. You're almost never going to play this for 6.
Right.
I think this could be a cool card for Commander if you can find like a full party there.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
And I think that's very doable across all of Magic.
Yeah.
Just getting, the 4 for creature types,
Mm-hmm.
and it just makes. I mean, even playing like a pingers deck with this, where you just play a bunch of like tap, deal 1 damage to any target, becomes really threatening when that is death
With
touch.
that death touch, yeah.
Yeah, great card.
Phyleth World Sculptor, also a very large 6-drop, 5/5.
Yeah.
This with the landfall mechanic, cool card.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is Avenger of Zendikar, but tweaked a little bit. It only functions off your basic lands, which is why we didn't put this into the main list. If this was every land like Avenger, I think this would have been a lot more powerful.
Mm-hmm.
But, I mean, you make plants for every basic land you control, and then you get to put 4 1/1 counters on one specific plant.
Mm-hmm.
So it's definitely an interesting twist on Avenger of Zendikar, and I think it's a cool kind of like lower power commander that could be fun to build around.
Soaring Thought Thief for 2, blue, black, flash, flyer. As long as an opponent has 8 or more cards in their graveyard, rogues you control get +1. Whenever one or more rogue you control attacks, each opponent mills 2 cards.
Yeah.
That's a lot. That's some good milling right there.
It's a lot, especially on uncommon. This card's really powerful. It's sort of a rogue lord, giving them +1/+0. Lots of mill options here. You know, you're getting 2 cards every time you swing with your rogues. And it's a flash flying 1/3 that has the potential to be a 2/3 once you've milled enough cards. Very strong.
Kargan Intimidator, a 2-drop 3/1 with the Coward mechanic.
Mm-hmm. Probably my favorite, like most flavorful line of text is the cowards can't block warriors, calling back to Boldweir Intimidator. I like this activated effect too. 1, just a single mana of anything. Choose one that hasn't been chosen. You can either pump it by +1/+1, turn a creature into a coward, which means it can't block your warriors, or just give a warrior a trample. And it's a 3/1 on its own for 2, which is very solid.
Yep. And finally, in our honorable mentions, we got Felidar Retreat for 4, enchantment, landfall. Whenever land enters the battlefield under your control, choose 1. You can make it 2/2 white cat beast, or you can put +1/+1 on all your creatures and give them vigilance for the turn.
Yeah, we were really excited about this one yesterday, and
still excited.
Still excited about it. It's one of those cards where it's like it's 4 mana, so it's like almost a little too high on the mana cost to make the main list.
Yeah.
But we wanted to wrap up with this one. I think this card's really cool. And
yeah, and like you said, this card really needed to be a 3-drop.
Yep.
Yep.
But of course, it would have been nuts if it was a 3-drop.
Yes,
that's the real issue.
It would have been pretty crazy if it was a 3-drop. But I think that's where it should have been. But
yeah. I think this is still a really great card for like white weenie kind of decks.
Yes.
Just all around good card.
Yep.
White needed this.
Well, thanks for tuning in. That concludes the Zendikar Rising spoiler season. These are all the cards.
Indeed.
These are the highlighted cards we think are the strongest, the best of the set. I, for one, and I mentioned already, think that this is a very, very strong set. I'm very excited to get a few boxes of this. And
I'm ready.
Look forward to
playing
playing
it.
it.
Set boosters pre-ordered and ready to be delivered.
Right on. Very cool. All right. Well, be a friend of the gathering. Hit the like button. Hit subscribe. And we look forward to seeing you at the next episode.